Hello, William here again, and thank you for joining me for this week's project video. Now this week's project is very simple, and therefore the video is going to be very short. I'm going to be turning a platter as part of a present for a friend. I had started something earlier in the week and spent 4 or 5 days messing on it, and in the end I gave up. Well, I say gave up. I'm going to restart it and finish the project video at a later date. Now this week's project video is going to be a very simple oak platter as part of a present for a friend. I'm going to turn it from this bit of crotch oak, which in fact came from an English castle as part of a restoration project many years ago. Now, very difficult to get any wood from such sources as stately homes and castles these days, because there are way too many video cameras. Now, in the first instance, I'm going to mount the wood onto a hex nut glue block in order to turn a recess in the bottom to hold it in the C-jaws of my chuck. So the first thing to do then is to face off the remnants of the last project on the glue block and glue it to the piece. Now the way that I prefer to use a glue block is to put the glue on the glue block whilst mounted on the lathe, and then bring the piece up pre-centered onto the glue block. Now, just as a reminder for people that may have forgotten, is that it's best, certainly in cold weather, to heat the glue block with a hot air gun to get it up to temperature before you put the glue on. This will give you a little bit more time before it cures and make sure you get a very good adhesion between the two surfaces. Okay, so off camera I heated up both the project and the hex nut glue block using the hot air gun, and stuck it using my faithful Stanley hot glue gun. Having trimmed the rim, I now just have to square up the base and make a recess for the C-jaws of my chuck. As you can see here, I'm just deploying my Simon Hope negative rake scraper, which is a wonderful piece of kit as long as you maintain that burr. Okay, I'm just going to use the 35mm Forstner bit to drill a hole to put my token in. Now I'm going to sand this down to 400 grit, but I've also at some stage got to think about the natural voids and cracks that have appeared in the crotch. At this stage I'm thinking of filling them with some 30-minute epoxy, which is heavily laced with gold mica powder. This will give the impression of sunken gold streaks in the wood. I do know a little bit of history about this wood. It was left over from a reconstruction project after a fire in an English castle in the early 18th century. I acquired it along with a few other smaller pieces as part of a clear-out sale. Now, I find the best way to remove large items from the glue block is just to give them a tap. And it does in fact come off very easily. Acceptably wobbly. Here I'm just going to finish off and make this surface level using my Simon Hope square negative rake scraper. Now, it would have been more logical, of course, to have put the resin in the cracks before I did the sanding, since now I'm going to have to do it again. Now, I have used this technique before of mixing a 30-minute epoxy resin with a very high density of gold mica powder and getting it in the large cracks. This does make an appearance of a streak of gold in the wood. Now here I'm just removing the excess resin, again using my negative rake scraper. Okay, once I'd sanded it back to 400 grit, I applied several coats of Hampshire Sheen pre-thinned sanding sealer, denibbing between each coat. Here I'm applying a generous coat of Hampshire Sheen High Gloss using the hot air gun method. Perfect. The final touch then is to add some Hampshire Sheen gold embellishing wax, and hopefully it will get caught in that open grain in the nooks and crannies. And finally then to glue in my token in the base. Okay, that's probably the quickest and most simplest project video I've done, but I'm very happy with the outcome. As I mentioned right at the beginning, this is going to form part of a present for a friend, and it will be graced with some amber liquid and some crystal glasses. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did turning it, albeit very simple and very quick, and I hope to see you again next week.